Is going on, folks? Hope everybody's having a wonderful early Saturday morning. If you keep the Sabbath, Shabbat Shalom to you, and if you don't keep the Sabbath, shame on you. Just joking, folks. Again, honestly, I hope everybody's having a wonderful early Saturday morning. This video is going to be a rebuttal back to my friend Mark Bates, who I bumped into on YouTube. Never met him formally, but again, still call him my friend. He's from what I understand, a Messianic, which I was for 20 years. I may be wrong, but I think he is a Messianic. And again, I call him my beloved Messianics. I still miss him dearly, but I'm gonna rebuttal him as far as some of the things that he's been rebuttaling, I guess, on some of my videos, and nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It's all done. It's all done appropriately right now. But again, we're to shun profane babblings, profane and vain babblings. This stuff's going to lead further, and lawlessness to spread like gangrene. That's why I'm going to do that. So remember, first thing first, guys. Acts 17:11. Search the scriptures daily to see if what I'm telling you is true, or with what Mark is telling you is true, or anyone. Doesn't matter if it's me or Mark or anyone, folks. Not singling him out, or again, I'm including myself in that, folks. Be as a noble Bereans that search the scriptures daily to see if these things are so. But they were eager to receive the word, but unlike the Thessalonians, folks, who got lazy on that, they just did not take Paul's word at it. They still did their due diligence by searching the scriptures to see if these things were so. Why? Because many false teachers have gone out in this world and have deceived many. I pray I'm not one of them. I pray Mark's not one of them either. But again, these things have to be addressed. Now, one thing I'm going to start off real quick by stating is this, and again, I'll be directing Mark quite a bit in this video because it is a rebuttal back to him. As I said in one of my videos, and I've said this in many of my videos actually, whenever there's a disagreement between two believers in the Messiah, okay, doesn't matter if you're Christian, Catholic, Messianic, if you are a believer in our Savior Yahshua the Messiah, and you have a difference of opinion, okay, or not, actually just a disagreement on a matter, and you cannot get it resolved, I always tell people you take it to this two-edged sword. To save time, folks, I'll try not to put too many screenshots of in order to keep this video as short as possible, of scriptures. But please look these scriptures up, folks. If you have a Bible, please, I encourage you, look these things up. Do your due diligence, folks. Just don't take my word for it at all. Over in Jacob 3, some Bibles may say James, mine says Jacob. James, same person we're talking about here. In James 3, beginning of verse 13. Okay, we're going to find this two-edged sword, true wisdom, the true wisdom rule, you want to call it. There's a reason why it's Jacob that is presenting this. Why? He was at the Jerusalem Council. There's a reason. This is all pertaining to Acts 10. It's not coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. I just don't. I don't know how anybody could be a teacher. I'm not saying Mark does either. I'm just saying I don't know how anybody could be a teacher of the Bible and say, oh, it's just coincidence, you know. I don't see how, but that's another subject all in itself. With that being said and done, in Jacob 3:13, let's go over there real quick. Jacob 3, beginning of verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let him show by his good life his works in meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and faction in your heart, glory not and lie not against the truth. This wisdom, and it is a wisdom, it's acknowledging it. This wisdom is not a wisdom that comes down from above, but it's earthly, it's sensual, it is demonic. Okay? For where there is jealousy and faction, there is confusion and every evil deed. Not some evil deed, no, every evil deed. It doesn't matter how much Torah you got behind it. If it's got any of this in it, it is evil. It's that simple. This is what a lot of my Messianic friends don't understand. Now, again, and I was a Messianic once. Yahweh told me to get rid of that Matthew 5:17 sword. and this is the sword you're going to use. And this is what I bring, folks. I'm not afraid to say this. This is undefeated. If you're honest with yourself, hey, and I'm still a child in the classroom. I'm wrong many a times. But if you want to find out who's right and who's wrong, you take it right to this two-edged sword. That's what I'm going to do right now, and apply it and see, hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong many times. But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, peaceable, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. Doesn't matter how much Torah you got, when you begin to show partiality and you begin to show hypocrisy in your logic, in your wisdom, you have now fallen into demonic wisdom, doctrines of demons that are full of lies and hypocrisy, even though you got all that Torah with it. It's that simple. This is why Jacob is addressing this, because he bumped into this at the Jerusalem Council. Remember, we speak wisdom and mystery. Now, with all that being said and done, let's go real quick. If you're not familiar with my friend here, Mark Bates, one of his videos, again, this is what started this is Acts 10, and I want to kind of keep it to Acts 10, even though he's branching off into the COVID-19 vaccine, which Yahweh, I'm not afraid to say this, folks, I was given that second opportunity in late 2018, and had my road to Damascus on October 21st, 22nd, 23rd of 2018 in a way that medical science and science cannot explain, and they don't have to explain, because it was very clear what was happening. And then here's your sword back, Tony, go back to work, and that's what I've been doing. Then COVID shows up. So again, that I'm looking forward to addressing and rebuttaling his comments on my videos about COVID-19 and faith and all that stuff. But first things first, I don't want to get branched off all over the place on this. So again, we want to stick to Acts 10, and then I'll go ahead and deal with that at a later time, hopefully soon, Yahweh willing. So this is Mark Bates again, to give you an idea. This is on the Acts 10, which is why I kind of started with him, because it's false doctrine. I'm saying that humbly again. It's false doctrine. So let me go ahead and play this short video.
Everyone, Mark Bates here. In the last video, we talked about how context is king when reading scripture. Now, I want to show you one of the clearest examples of that. Acts chapter 10. Now, most Christians read this and think it's about the food laws being abolished, but that's not what's happening at all. When Peter sees the sheet descending from heaven filled with animals, he hears, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Now, most assume God has given permission to eat anything. But if you know your Second Temple Jewish context, Peter's response tells us more. He says, "By no means, Lord, I've never eaten anything common or unclean." That phrase, common or unclean, comes right out of Jewish ritual language. Common meant animals forbidden to be eaten, while unclean referred to animals that were clean but had become ritually defiled. This vision wasn't about food, it was about people. Peter thought Gentiles were unclean. God was showing him, "What I have made clean, do not call common." So, Acts 10 isn't a buffet invitation, it's a mission revelation. Context changes everything. Follow for the next video where we'll unpack the Greek meaning behind kill and eat and what it reveals about Peter's background. Hey everyone.
Real quick, I want you to hear one more part of this video.
In the last video, we talked about how context is king when reading scripture. Now, I want to show you one of the clearest examples of that. Acts chapter 10. Now, most Christians read this and think it's about the food laws being abolished, but that's not what's happening at all. When Peter sees the sheet descending from heaven filled with animals, he hears, "Rise, Peter, kill and eat." Now, most assume God has given permission to eat anything. But if you know your Second Temple Jewish context, Peter's response tells us more.
Now, I'll stop right there. This is going to lead to, and I'll show you in a minute what I'm talking about. Let me go right back to YouTube. Actually, let me show you the comments. This is from my video that I put out recently. let's see. Hopefully I didn't make a mess of this. And I will say this, when it comes to my notes, even in my youth, I would make a mess of things. I'll just flat out tell you guys, that is, I've said that in videos before, folks. I am guilty as charged. I am, I shouldn't say I'm a work in progress, because boy, I was even told that as my youth. This is spanning from my video, Acts 10, Kill and Eat, the parable of the sower, which I just put out, just a day ago. Acts 10, Kill and Eat, the parable of the sower. All right. This is what Mark Bates from the Rabbit Room, Apologetics, is responding to that video by saying, "Hello, Tony. I am sharing this on your channel so we can continue the dialogue." And I appreciate that, by the way. He's more than welcome to. I respect your zeal and your desire for scriptural obedience. However, accurately answering the questions you are raising demands more than just stringing together English cross-references. It requires a formal academic methodology, specifically an understanding of biblical languages, the Second Temple historical context, and the progressive revelation of scriptures. Now, when I saw that right away, that word, I've said this in videos way before I even met Mark. When I hear that word context, I'm like, oh. Why? Because I was a Messianic for 20 years, even at a young age, even like with Paul, even amongst the young kids that were being brought up as Messianics, I'm saying this humbly, I mean this, Yahweh knows my heart. I was more zealous and just more picking the word up a lot quicker than they were. Not to say they were drilled to, but I was just a step ahead of them. I'm not afraid to say that. What good to do all that? We went down. Okay, regardless, what I'm trying to say is, when I hear that word context, it's a word that I used a lot as a Messianic, taking out Christian ministers, taking out 3 Christian ministers one time at the age of 13. I'm just bringing that historical fact back in the day. Okay. And I see Mark Bates in his video addressing Christians in general, that about they're incorrect because they don't get the Second Temple, the Second Temple period, that time period that we're talking about here. They don't get pretty much, if you're trying to understand from a historical standpoint, from the time of Alexander the Great all the way up to Titus destroying the temple in 70 CE, that roughly that span of time. Okay, our Savior was alive at that time. That's what they mean by Second Temple period. That Christians don't get Acts chapter 10 because they don't understand Second Temple period history, theology, or that whole concept. He's right. Christians, a lot of them, they don't. Their swords aren't sharp enough. I agree with them. That's the problem, is that the Christians, and I've said this in videos way before I met Mark, the problem is Christians don't know how to rebuttal the Messianic property. But when Mark brought that up, when he brought it up in my video, I'm like, no, that's not going to work on me. No. I'm well acclimated in Second Temple. I was a Messianic for 20 years. But I stopped for a moment and I thought to myself, there's one or two possibilities. Either A, I'm not saying something correctly because I was a Messianic just like he's a Messianic. Okay, trained by some of the best. I'm not afraid to say that. If he's insinuating that I'm not understanding Second Temple period history, then I think he's mistaken there. I'm not saying he doesn't. No, that's not what I'm saying. But something tells me he's just used to saying that out. Mark, I think you're just used to saying that to people in general. You're not dealing with a Christian or a Catholic. I'm well acclimated with the Second Temple. I understand. What we also have to understand is Yahweh he corrects those he loves. In other words, if you take if you consider the Apostle Paul for a moment, okay, the Apostle Paul, who was drilled at the feet of Gamaliel, all right, one of the sharpest, and then the guy's hunting down, you know the story, hunting down the Apostolic Assembly, and then he has his road to Damascus, and now he's one of the good guys. Okay, Paul was very unique in the fact that this guy was already acclimated with Second Temple period stuff. Yet here he is being condemned by his own ex-peers for not understanding Second Temple period. That's not going to work. In other words, you're going to find with me, and I'll show that in a moment. No, that's not what's going on. I'm humbly saying I think this is the other way around. But I understand why you bring up Christians not knowing that, but you can't tell an ex-Messianic. That's just not going to work. I think I say this humbly, you're already programmed to say that automatically. Try listening to what I'm saying here. I'm saying that humbly, please. So I'm just trying to understand. But at the same token, I may not be saying all these things correctly either. I may not be communicating my point well enough. Understand. That's my intent right now. So what I'm going to do again is go by Jacob 3:13 through 18 and see if I'm wrong or if you're wrong, and draw that conclusions that the Holy Spirit take you on that. This one we're doing on the fly. So getting back to what you were stating here. As we see, when these what you're saying is getting back. Let's start over here. Okay. However, accurately answering the questions, you are raising demands more than just stringing together English cross-references. It requires a formal academic methodology, specifically an understanding of biblical languages, the Second Temple historical context, and the progressive revelation of Scripture. When these methodological tools are absent, it becomes easy to inadvertently impose artificial assumptions onto the text. My goal in this critique is to bring text eminent academic rigor to the discussion so we can allow the biblical canon to speak with its own native historical voice. Now, for those that are maybe watching, this video, not that I'm talking to y'all like a simpleton. That's not what I'm trying to do. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to help out with some of the terminology. Let's see if I got that. Here we go. What Mark is referring to when we say a formal academic methodology. A formal academic methodology is a structured, systematic framework used to conduct research, analyze data, and produce valid scholarly findings. It ensures that research is rigorous, unbiased, verifiable, and reproducible. A formal methodology typically comprises specific, universally recognized components depending on the academic discipline. The core research design, research questions / hypothesis, clearly defining the problem to be solved, literature review, analyzing existing scholarly work to identify research gaps, methodological approach. You can see here qualitative, focuses on understanding behaviors, opinions, or concepts through interviews, ethnography, and textual analysis. The quantitative focuses on numerical data, statistical it's too early in the morning. Statistical inference and mathematical modeling using surveys or controlled experiments. Mixed methods, a combination of both qualitative and quantitative approaches. Data collection analysis, data gathering, establishing protocols to gathering information, in other words, randomized controlled trials, structured observations, or archival research, validity and reliability, applying safeguards to control for bias and ensure the results are accurate and consistent across repeated trials. The standard academic format when presenting the methodology in a paper, typically in the IMRAD format. Introductions, methods, results, discussions. Scholars must include detailed descriptions of how the research was conducted, justifications for why specific tools or models were chosen, explicit explanations of data analysis techniques so other researchers can replicate the study. Notice here, I'll stop right here on number 2, data collection analysis, data gathering, establishing protocols for gathering information, randomized controlled trials, structured observations, or archival research, validity and reliability, applying safeguards to control for bias and ensure the results are accurate and consistent across repeated trials. In other words, no partiality, no hypocrisy. You even see the word of Yahweh right here in this part right here. And pretty much applying safeguards to control for bias. Now, I was a Messianic for 20 years, kept kosher with the best of them. All right. To this day, I don't keep kosher. I don't like pork. I don't like shrimp. Remember, this all started for me after 2018. Okay, I was a wimp with Yahweh. I was a wimp, and I asked Yahweh if it's okay if I could still stick to my kosher diet the way, even after my Messianic years when everything fell apart in 2000. I still can't maintain that kosher part of me. But when Yahweh began to show me the truth of things and show me, yeah, you were wrong as Messianic. Kill and eat, man, kill and eat. I realized through faith that, yeah, that if it's laid before me, yeah, I'm going to have to make those tough choices. But I asked Yahweh at home, is it okay if okay, fine, Tony. You know, he did the whole Ezekiel thing, all right? Don't use human dung. Go in. In other words, I understand that. That's why I'm not a Christian. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Mark. That's not who I am. You have to understand that when you're dealing with me, you're dealing with a person that I have nothing but love for those that still keep kosher. I do. I get it. If I'm in your home, I'll eat kosher flat out. But when you begin to teach that false teaching, that's where Yahweh tells me, yeah, I got to do my job, and that's what I'm going to do my job. So I'm not coming with this bias. A lot of Messianic ministers like to say, oh, you just want that ham sandwich. No, you can't pull that on me. That's why I understand why Yahweh built me a certain way. That kind of bias mentality isn't going to work with me. Okay? That's why at the same token, I'm also watching you, Mark. Can you also say the same thing? Do you understand what it's like not to be a Messianic and think outside of that? That's part of the same methodology that you're applying. I have yet to know you fully. I don't know how long you've been a Messianic, but I can tell you right now, I'm not a Christian either. You see what I've done. You see, you commented on another one of my videos about Sunday. You clearly see now. I'm not a Christian, I'm not a Messianic, so that bias thing, it's not where I'm. You'll see, hypocrisy just ain't gonna work with me. That's what I'm trying to tell you, and it doesn't work with Yahweh. That's the main thing. It's not wisdom from above. So, with all that being said and done, now getting back to what you were saying. Again, try not to get too lengthy on that. And for those that are watching this, again, I respect your zeal and your desire for scriptural obedience. However, accurately answering the questions you are raising demands more than just stringing together English cross-references. It requires a formal academic methodology, specifically an understanding of biblical languages, the Second Temple historical context, and the progressive revelation of Scripture. No, I'm sorry, you're wrong. And the reason why is we're going to go right over to the Scriptures. We're going to let the Scriptures speak for themselves. Over in 1 Corinthians 1. In 1 Corinthians 1, I stated that in that earlier video, but again, it's the sun's rising. Let's go ahead and get this one started. In 1 Corinthians 1, in the inspired text, we're going to find, and I'm putting up in the Strongs, that way we can see some of these Greek words. Again, I was a Messianic. I'm well aware of the countermeasure. I know how, I've said this in videos before I even met Mark. I'm well aware of the countermeasure. I already know what's coming, and I already know, Yahweh has showed me how to take this stuff down because I was trained in it. Try to understand. I guess in other words, I'm not trying to be difficult, but understand, yes, but it's just a question of knowing, getting to know each other. And that's why, again, I'm just trying to help. So with all that being said and done, let's go ahead and start with 1 Corinthians 1. 1 Corinthians 1, beginning in verse 18. 1 Corinthians 1, 18. You can see it here. I'll take it right out of the Strong's. I'll read it out of my Bible. This is the KJV Strong's Concordance. I'm reading out of the ASV. For the word of the stake is to them that perish foolishness, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of Yahweh. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning will I bring to nothing. When we look that up in verse 19, and the reason why I'm going this route is because I could tell, Mark, you like to pull this scholarly Greek. This is what you're kind of about. This is what you're leading me to, and I'm like, okay, this is going to take more time, but I'm going to show you. Yeah, I was already trained. In other words, this is what I used to do also as a young man. You're probably more. I'm not afraid to say this. You're probably my superior on that. I'm not afraid to say that. You're a theologian. I get it, but when you're young and you're absorbing this stuff, yeah, I was taking this stuff also down. You can see here that word 4678, Sophia, okay, from 4680, wisdom, broad, full of intelligence, used of the knowledge of very diverse matters, the wisdom which belongs to men, specifically the very knowledge of things human and divine, acquired by acuteness and experience, and summed up in maxims and proverbs. In other words, your formal academic methodology. Mark, why are you even going there when the scriptures are clearly telling you, Paul is letting you know right off the bat, for the preaching of, I'll just read it again, verse 19, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise. Okay, showed you what that word was. Now the word for wise, sophos, my Greek is not that good, 4680 in the Greek. Wise, skilled, expert of art. You can see here, Aiken, clear. I mean, how far do you want to break this one down? Wise, skilled in letters, cultivated, learned, of the Greek philosophers, orators, of Jewish theologians, Christian teachers, all this Second Temple period, all of this, you can't tiptoe around. We're breaking this down in the Greek. We're breaking it down in the Greek. In other words, if we walk by faith and not by sight, then why are we walking by sight? And we're even breaking down by sight, and it all is going to end up being, this is why I'm hoping you're not like that, Mark. One of those messianics that everybody's a crackpot except you. I'm not saying you are. I just pray that you're not, because, boy, that's where it's not going to last long. But, again, I'm not stating that at all. I pray that that's not the situation. It's just that my history shows that that's always the norm. But I pray that's not. With that being said and done, we see in verse 20, where is the wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the disputer of this world? Has Yahweh not made the wisdom of this world foolish? Foreseeing that in the wisdom of Elohim, the world through its wisdom did not know Yahweh. It's true, through the wisdom of this world did not. So how can we talk about a formal academic methodology? Again, that makes no sense. Foreseeing that in the wisdom of Elohim, the world through its wisdom did not know Yahweh. It was Yahweh's good pleasures through the foolishness of the preaching to save them that believe. Seeing that Jews ask for signs and Greeks seek wisdom, some may ask for a formal academic methodology, but we preach the Messiah impelled. To Jews a stumbling block and the Gentiles foolishness, but to them that are called both Jews and Greeks, the Messiah is the power of Yahweh and the wisdom of Yahweh, because the foolishness of Yahweh is wiser than men, and the weakness of Yahweh is stronger than men. For behold your calling, brethren, that not many were wise after the flesh, not many mighty. High school dropout here, no college education, bus driver for 25 years. Not many noble are called, but Yahweh chose the foolish things of this world, that he might put to shame them that are wise. Did Yahweh choose a formal academic methodology? No, that's not what Yahweh chose, Mark. That's not what Yahweh chose, and that's not what he chooses. But Yahweh chooses the foolish things of this world, that he might put to shame them that are wise. And Yahweh chose the weak things of this world that he might put to shame the things that are strong. Is a formal academic methodology, is that weak? No. Well, Yahweh does not choose the strong things, he chooses the weak things. And the base things of this world and the things that are despised, the things that are despised, did Yahweh choose? Yes, and the things that are not, that he might bring to nothing the things that are. Right there, we cannot fight the inspired text. We cannot fight the will of Yahweh. We cannot fight the active, living word of Yahweh. We can't do that. Now, with that being said and done, this is what Paul is alluding to. This is what Paul is alluding to when he's over in Colossians 2:8. Over in Colossians 2:8, when Paul is warning us in advance, Colossians 2:8, take heed lest there shall be anyone that makes spoil of you through his philosophy and his vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of this world, and not after the Messiah. Contextualization is a philosophy of men. I already showed you that before. Stanford University, all that. That is a, again, and in one of your videos, you flat out bring out your philosophy. It's not about your philosophy. It is about Yahshua the Messiah impaled. That's what we preach, not Second Temple period history, not contextualization, not your philosophy or my philosophy. It is Yahshua the Messiah impaled. That's what the active living word says. If we know Yahweh is going to destroy the wisdom of the wise and the discerning and the discernment of the discerning, well, how can we use the discerning of the discernment? How can we use this formal academic methodology? How can we use that wisdom of the wise, that Greek wisdom, if we know he is already destined to destroy it? That's not context. That is false doctrine. Flat out. You don't argue with Yahweh. It's just that simple. That is what the text says. We even showed you in there in the Greek. You can't argue that. You can't. I mean, there's no way around that. That's why. And again, I'm showing with this is what you're putting. And I don't see Yahshua the Messiah impel. I see academic, wisdom of the world. I mean, it's right there, Mark, even in your words, your philosophy. Mark, how, I mean. So, with all that being said and done, getting back over here to, love you, buddy, by the way, love you. It's a very passionate subject. You're right. It is passionate. It's passionate because the problem for me, this is just me personally, is that I kind of already know what I'm going up against. It's like, oh, boy, but when you're told to do your job, yeah, I can't tell you I would know. Can't pull a Peter. Can't pull a Peter, say not so. Anyway, continuing on. Here is an academic evaluation of the primary theological and exegetical claims presented in your video regarding Acts 10, the parable of the sower, and the teaching of the Messiah. Now, you might be right. I'm going to look at my video again to see maybe if I misrepresented something. However, though, if I did, I'll take a look at that. But from what you're showing here, I'm not getting that. But let's take a look. The true meaning of Acts 10: divine revelation, not false witness. Your video posted the vision of the sheet in Acts 10 was literally about eating unclean animals, and that Peter's subsequent conclusion in Acts 10:28 that the vision applied to people was a blonde moment. I did say that. Like a blind moment, or a false witness. Okay, the assertion fundamentally fractures the organic unity of Luke's narrative and misses the progressive theological logic of the text. I'll stop right there. I think there's a part of that statement is correct. If upon remembering that video, I think I see what you're trying to say. That the way I worded it was that only a part of it is correct. The rest is where I disagree with you. That what I'm saying is that vision, kill and eat, arise, Peter, kill and eat, only had to do with clean and unclean animals. Let me correct myself. I see your point. That vision of kill and eat is meant not only to kill and eat those animals, but also to go to the Gentiles. It was twofold. Okay? That was, I did not communicate that correctly. Okay? However, though, let's be honest, you're stating that it has nothing to do with food, and this is where you're wrong. Okay? Because the point that I am trying to make in all my Acts 10 videos is this: why is Peter deliberately ignoring the command of Yahshua the Messiah to go to the nations? There's a reason why. Peter, in other words, I would like to know, why are you doing that, Peter? I know it sounds like I'm really bashing Peter. I'm doing that deliberately. I shouldn't say deliberately. It sounds like I'm bashing Peter because I'm trying to make Messianics understand what you're preaching is way off key. It is, and it really is. Again, I was a Messianic one time too. Beginning. In other words, how did I even miss that? It's very clear. Okay, now with that being said and done, I see where you're going with that. However, though, understand it's not going to negate the final outcome. You'll see why. Let's get back over to what you were saying. About Acts 10. Okay, the assertion fundamentally fractures the organic unity of Luke's narrative and misses the progressive theological, the logic of the text. And no, it doesn't. I totally disagree with that. Luke, who is the author of the book of Acts, is also the author of the book of Luke. Okay, let's see here. Give me 1 second and get my notes together, right? This is where I know I get sloppy with my work, and forgive me for that. Forgive me for that. I'll get that for you real quick. Over in the book of Luke, let's see here. Over in Luke 10, I have my notes, so I'll just combine it. Over in Luke chapter 10. Luke chapter 10. And Luke 10, beginning in verse 8. And into whatever city you enter, and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you. I don't know if I had that in my notes, in case you don't have a Bible, because I don't like to do that to people, but no, I didn't put that. But anyway, again, just to save time, feel free to look it up. Remember, Luke chapter 10, verse 8. Luke chapter 10, verse 8. We read it right here. And into whatever city you enter, and they receive you, eat such things that are set before you. Now, when we back up, who was Yahshua the Messiah talking to give this reference? Let's go back to verse 1. No, after these things, the teacher appointed 70 others and sent them 2 and 2 before his face into every city and place where he himself was about to come. And he said to them, the harvest indeed is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray you therefore the owner of the harvest that he would send forth laborers into his harvest. Go your ways, behold, I send you forth as lambs in the middle of wolves. Carry no purse, no wallet, no shoes, and salute no man on the way. And into whatever house you shall enter, first say, peace be to this house. And of a son of peace. No, as you get down here, folks, you're going to see Mark. Clear as day, Luke is recording that he's telling them that whatever house, and I'll read it again, and into whatever city you enter, and they receive you, eat such things that are set before you. Okay, now you could try to pull that second temple thing. Well, if they're only going to the Jews, well, why wouldn't they eat what was set forth if everybody's eating kosher? No, it's very clear that Yahshua is already establishing all meats are clean. That what goes into the belly, into the stomach, out the drought, that doesn't defile a man. What does defile a man is what comes out of his mouth, as we see in Matthew 15:21. Like false witnesses, that defiles a man. Clear as day, Yahshua is in other words, again, look at the context. And into whatever city you enter, and they receive you, eat such things as are set before you. Well, if they're all Jews and they keep kosher, and they don't go to the Gentiles, right? Second Temple. I mean, this is what you're preaching. This is what your YouTube videos are saying. Okay, so then they're only going to Jews. So why wouldn't they eat what is set before them? Clearly, the context is a little bit more than that, Mark. Clearly, the context is a little bit more than that because it correlates with what is being preached in Matthew. The Bible harmonizes; it doesn't contradict. Okay, Yahshua the Messiah knows he's going to die and raise and come back from the dead. He calls his shot beforehand. He knows that by that action, that's what's going to graft the Gentiles in. But the law does not go to the Gentiles. Yahshua the Messiah is well aware that there are more Gentiles out there than there are Jews, and that they eat pork. But the law does not go to them. It's going to get nailed to the stake. He is setting this framework up, Mark. This is proper academic methodology. Yes, we know he kept kosher. Yes, we know that. But he's got to prepare them for the Gentiles who don't keep kosher, which is why Luke is already putting this down. Now in Acts 10, Luke is recording Peter, arise, kill and eat. You see that blanket that's laid before you? No, that is not what Luke is recording in Luke 10. So right off the bat, for you to make the assertion that what I'm saying isn't correlating with what Luke is saying, you're wrong. I just proved it is. If Luke is recording, and I'll read it one more time in Luke 10 verse 8, and into whatever city you enter and they receive you. Picture this. Picture your mom telling you, whatever's on that plate, you better eat it. Did you ever have your mom tell you that, or your dad tell you that? What did that mean? That means that there's something on that plate that you probably didn't eat or didn't like to eat for some reason. So for your mom or dad to tell you whatever's on that plate, eat it, that means that there's something on that plate that you don't normally eat or want to eat. That's why mom and dad are telling you that. That is common sense. It's not me adding anything. It is contextualization. It is the inspired word. Okay? Yes, we know Yahshua kept kosher. We know that Second Temple period Jews did not eat with Gentiles. I'm with you. We know that Second Temple period Jews kept kosher. I'm with you. However, the text, the inspired text, which is both active and alive, it transcends Second Temple period. Second Temple period was only a period of what, 400 years? About 400 years, that's it. There's more to this plan than just a 400-year period. And this is why Hebrews 4:12 is clear. This is why the active and living word is setting this up for Acts 10. So, is Peter in Joppa, which is every city, is he going to eat what is laid before him? No, he's going to break the command. This is not what Luke is recording. So here in verse 8 again, and into whatever city you enter and they receive you, eat such things that are set before you. Why wouldn't they eat such things that are set before him? Why make that comment? Because he's setting the stage for kill and eat. Now, again, this is why I say humbly, you're wrong. No, your assertion here about, again, I'll read it one more time. Acts 10, Acts 10:28, like a parable. Fractures that the assertion fundamentally fractures the organic unity of Luke's narrative. No, it doesn't. Luke 10:8 already established that. So that has been debunked right there. Now, so again, your video, you're showing here eating unclean animals, and that Peter's subsequent conclusion in Acts 10:28 that the vision applied to people was a blonde moment. Yes, that part I agree. Or a false witness. False witness, yes. False witness, yes. The false witness is not going to come until after Cornelius reminds him that he was commanded to do a job and he failed. The canonical text itself authenticates Peter's conclusion as a divine intended meaning. No, it does not. I don't know how. Again, let's go over to that passage. Let's go over that passage and let's see that. When Messianics, again, as a Messianic, I know, I used to pull that, go clear as day, Acts 10:28, clear as day. Peter is telling you this is what the vision means. And it says here, Acts 10:28, and he said unto them, you know how that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another's nation. But Elohim has showed me that I should not call any man common or unclean. Where does it say that this is the divinely inspired fact, that this is what that vision meant? It doesn't state that at all. It doesn't state that at all. Now, to give contextualization of that, let's go over to Acts 12. Acts 12, we'll find this. Acts 12, verse 1. Now, about that time, Herod the king put forth his hands to... This is after Acts 10. This is after Cornelius. Now, about that time, Herod the king put forth his hands to afflict certain of the assembly. And he killed Jacob, the brother of John, with the sword. And when he saw that it pleased the Jews, he proceeded to seize Peter also. And those were the days of unleavened bread. And when he had taken him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to guard him, intending after the Passover to bring him forth to the people. Peter therefore was kept in prison, but prayer was made earnestly of the assembly of Yahweh for him. And when Herod was about to bring him forth, the same night Peter was sleeping between 2 soldiers. He's heavily guarded, bound with 2 chains. And guards put at the door, and guards before the door kept the prison. And behold, an angel of Yahweh stood by him, and a light shined in the cell. A light shined in the cell, and he struck Peter on the side and awoke him, saying, rise up quickly. This is a jailbreak. Rise up quickly. And his chains fell off from his hands. Okay, and his chains fell off from his hands. Now, if I stop right there and tell you, this angel is busting him out of jail. No. We don't know that until we see what Peter says this vision meant. First of all, who said it's a vision? Well, no, we got to wait for Peter to declare what this means. No, just like in Acts 10, we clearly see Elohim say, arise, Peter, kill and eat. Oh, that what Elohim says doesn't matter. Why do we have to go off of what Peter said when we see what Elohim said? Think about that, Mark. Think about what you're saying. How is that context? How is that context? That's not context. That's no. Finish reading. And the angel said to him, gird yourself and bind on your sandals. And he did so. Hitting the side. Get your clothes on. Jailbreak. Let's go. Move. It's a jailbreak. Okay. And he says to him, cast your garments about you and follow me. And he went out and followed, and he knew not that it was true which was done by the angel, but thought he saw a vision. So, well, I guess it's a vision then, because Peter says it's a vision, so it's a vision. It didn't really happen, it was just a vision. Mark, listen to what you're saying. Listen to what you're saying. This is why, again, when it comes to a formal academic methodology without bias, you're being very biased and partial in your understanding. Because you're in other words, you're putting all your chips in without any authorization that what Peter says, because Peter said that's it. Yeah, it's sealed the deal. So then remember, Yahshua Messiah says over in Matthew 23, better way to say it. Let's go over to Matthew 23. Let's go to Yahshua Messiah, not the psychology of men, not the wisdom of men, not the rudiments of this world. No. Let's go to the head, Yahshua. That's what Colossians 2 is all about. Let's take this up with the Master. Matthew 23. And Matthew 23, verse 16. Woe to you, blind guides, that say, whoever shall swear by the temple, that is nothing. But whoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. You fools and blind, for which is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctifies the gold? And whoever shall swear by the altar, that's nothing. But whoever shall swear by the gift that's upon it, he is a debtor. You blind, which is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctifies the gift? He therefore that swears by the altar swears by it and by all things on it. Okay, so if you're saying every time Peter speaks that is divine, that's the divine interpretation, well then let's take a look. Then I guess it was just a vision. The angel didn't break him out. Or again, when he tells Yahshua Messiah over in Matthew, far be it from me, this will never happen to you. Well, get behind me, Satan. Again, no. Peter, if I was to show how many times to save time, Peter opens his mouth incorrectly. And that's exactly what Messianics do. They force, and yes, it does state that. The dispute is not that Peter, yes, Peter is declaring. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that over in Acts 10. He is declaring that, as he says in Acts 10:28. And he said to them, you yourselves know that it is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to join himself or come to one another's nation. And yet to me has Yahweh showed that I should call any man common, that I should not call any man common or unclean. Yes, Peter is saying that. Is that what Yahweh meant? Yes and no. Because what you're failing to bring up, this is why I got to be patient on this. What you're failing to bring up is what held up the line for 10 years. He was commanded to go to all of the nations. We see that in Matthew 28:16, the Great Commission. We see that in Luke 24. We also see that in John 21. Clear as day. You can't beat around the bush with that, Mark. You cannot talk about Second Temple period. Again, Second Temple period, yeah, the Mosaic Law is also part of the issue here. What is unlawful use of the law? The law does not go to the Gentiles. I'm getting ahead of myself, but let's get back to what you're showing. But so again, that Luke thing, again, I showed you wrong. Luke 10:8 shows no, it is in alignment. It is in proper alignment. So that right there isn't going to work, Mark. Vision applied to people. The canonical text itself authenticates Peter's conclusion as a divinely. That's your opinion there. The canonical text shows what Peter's conclusion was, but to call it the divinely intended meaning, no, because now Galatians 2:11-14 is in your way, and no, Houston, we got a big problem. There's no way you can even talk about contextualization without answering the question honestly. Remember, James 3:13-18. Glory not and lie not against the truth, Mark. If this was the divinely intended meaning, then why is Peter ignoring what he came out of his mouth was the divinely intended meaning? Explain that, Mark. Again, glory not and lie not against the truth. And that's 10 years after the men of the circumcision held their peace and glorified Yahweh. You have yet to answer that question, Mark. That's wisdom with partiality and hypocrisy. It is demonic and confusing. No, Mark. You've got to answer that question according to the same measure that you use, which is Second Temple period. No, again, that includes the Mosaic Law, flat out. Otherwise, this isn't context. This is lunacy. Now, in his dialogue with the household of Cornelius, Peter presented the correct interpretation of the vision. Again, that's what you're stipulating. That is your biased opinion. Nowhere does it say that was the correct interpretation, but that is your biased opinion, and you're entitled to that. I understand. Peter's presented the correct interpretation of the vision that Yahweh gave him, but it had absolutely nothing to do with dietary laws. No, we're created in the image of Elohim, not four-footed beasts. Yes, it did. This is why your point was half right, but then it becomes mute here, because yes, it did. You're not addressing. You are failing to address why is Peter waiting 10 years in a world that is during the Second Temple period that has no planes, no trains, and no automobiles. And he is commanded to go to feed those sheep. What is he waiting for, Mark? What is he waiting for? He already received the Holy Spirit. Acts 2 has happened. It happened the same year the Messiah ascends to heaven. 10 years go by and he does nothing. Now, there's only two possibilities. And this is where you bring in that Second Temple period, which I'm well aware of, which is the Talmudic law, which now we're going to bring in the context, and I'm going to show you he was already ignoring the Talmud all over the place. Or the law of Moses, which is what Luke is telling you, which is what Mark is telling you in Mark 7, which is what Matthew 15, are you also yet without understanding? What the parable of the sower is saying? Mark, I mean, what are you doing? Love you, buddy. How can you talk about contextual? You're blowing all that to the curb, and you're just pounding away at Second Temple period Talmud. I understand that. Let's go over real quick. Matthew chapter 12. Let's try to be open-minded about this. In Matthew chapter 12, we see this. Matthew 12:1. At that season, Yahshua went on the Sabbath day through the grain fields, and his disciples were hungry and began to pluck ears and to eat. That's a no-no. That is a no-no. But the Pharisees, when they saw it, said to him, "Behold, your disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath." Do you think that Peter wasn't aware of that? No, this is Second Temple period Judaism. Yes, he's well aware of that. See, this is where you can't play that partial, and I'm not saying you are, but you can't pull that partial card. No. In other words, that's the measure that you were judging by, so we're going to stick by that measure. This is what the only gift that Yahweh gave me is to take down that hypocrisy isn't going to work. Partiality is not going to work. We stick to the true wisdom rule. Here, Peter is processing. Yeah, he's grabbing that grain, that fruit. He's eating on the Sabbath, walking through the grain fields. He's well aware that the Pharisees said that's a no-no. He's well aware that he's a Jew, but he's got his rabbi with him. But he said to them, "Have you not?" So what does Yahshua do? Yahshua pulls the David cart out. By the way, on a side note, we see in Exodus 16, it is unlawful. Yahweh says specifically, "Remain every man in his house. Remain every man in his place." You have preparation day for that. That's out of Yahweh's mouth. Now, I'm not saying that Yahshua is not perfect. Yahshua is explaining. He defines. A lot of Messianic ministers, they have this false notion that the Old Testament interprets the New Testament. No, 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 no. Yahshua the Messiah interprets both Old and New Testament. The New Testament doesn't interpret the Old doesn't interpret the New. Yahshua the Messiah interprets both Old and New. I'll show you in a minute, because you brought up another point that is incorrect. So right here, Peter is seen, Talmud, Second Temple period thinking, bye-bye. He's already doing it. Okay? He's learning that. Now, in Matthew chapter 15, we see this. Then, Matthew 15:1, then there came Yahshua from Jerusalem, Pharisees and scribes, saying, why do your disciples, including Peter, okay, transgress the traditions of the elders, for they wash not their hands when they eat bread? Was Peter unaware that in Second Temple period Judaism, that you're supposed to wash your hands before you eat bread? Peter's well aware. This is Second Temple period Judaism. That's right. Remember, I was a Messianic, so I'm trying to tell you that that's not going to work with me. Yeah. And what is Peter doing? He's not washing his hands before he wants to eat. That boy likes to eat. Yep. Second Temple period, Talmud, bye. He's already brushing it off. Openly. 1, walking in the grain fields. 2, eating bread without washing his hands. Now, to save time, let's go over to Luke 7. Yahshua the Messiah, centurion servant. The centurion sends friends down to supplicate Yahshua to see if he'll go and heal the servant. Yahshua goes. There's Peter going up that hill. Wait a minute. That's a Gentile. We don't go fellowship with a Gentile. And notice how it's a centurion. Notice, Peter's already processing. Second Temple period Judaism. Bye. It's all over the place. He's already processing that. What Peter does freeze at is Moses. Mark, I hope you're listening to me. It's the Mosaic law that causes Peter, and understandably so. Even me, I get this. Peter has shown clear as day, Talmud, but Moses, whoa. How do we know this? Mark, let's go to the scriptures. This academic method. Mark, come on, man. Seriously. I love you, buddy. I love you. Matthew 17. What do we find? Matthew 17:1. And after 6 days, Yahshua takes with him Peter and Jacob and John, his brother, and brings them up into a high mountain apart. And he was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his garments became white as the light. And behold, there appeared to them Moses and Eliah talking with him. And Peter answered and said to Yahshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If you will, I will make here 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Eliah. While he was yet speaking, how rude, right? While he was yet speaking, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And a voice out of the cloud saying, excuse me, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Listen to him. What about Moses? What about Leviticus 11? Listen to him. Because that's what's going to be your knee-jerk reaction. That's what's going to cause you to stumble when it comes to all authority being given to my Son, which takes place after he dies. Moses is not greater than Yahshua Messiah. Yahshua Messiah is the head. That's why his face did shine. That's what Colossians 2 is trying to tell us. This is what Colossians 2 is trying to tell us a little bit about Peter without throwing Peter under the bus too much. It's that simple, Mark. It's that simple. Peter wants to build a tabernacle for who? The law and the prophets, for Moses and Eliah. That's a problem, because my Son said to go. So now this is where Messianics get all caught up. Now Christians, yeah, I get it, but the Holy Spirit, I think, has been protecting Christians for quite a long. This is why I'm here to help now. If we're going to get technical again, it takes like with Paul, you got to get some of these guys to come out here, these assassins. They take that doctrine of Mary. No, that's not going to work. The fact is, if you want to break down context, the context is clearly there to support it is the law of Moses that is causing Peter to do this knee-jerk reaction. It's just not going to spill it out and tell you. And in fact, it does kind of spit it out and tell you. We walk by faith, Mark, not by sight. Not by sight. We speak wisdom in a mystery, Mark. You got to understand that. Now, with all that being said, I've heard this argument before. I remember I was well trained in that. I get it. Now, with that being said and done, let's go back to what you're asserting. The canonical text itself authenticates Peter's conclusion as a divinely intended meaning. In his dialogue with the household of Cornelius, Peter presented the correct interpretation of the vision that Yahweh gave him, and it had absolutely nothing to do with dietary laws, which it did. Peter concluded that Yahweh had shown him he should not call any man common or unclean. That's where he's incorrect. He's partly right, but partly wrong. Because what was causing Peter to wait? Well, we got to understand, Second Temple period. No. I just showed you 3 places where Peter just blew off Second Temple period Talmudic thinking. He didn't even pay it any mind, and he's getting shown on a daily basis by his rabbi, Yahshua Messiah, Talmud, Second Temple period Talmud don't mean nothing. Law of Moses, that's a whole different ball game, and that's where the context supports. Peter was no dimwit, Mark. Peter was no dimwit. Understandably so. I get Peter. I get it. This is a big thing, but it's not as big as you make it sound. We must understand Moses is not greater than Yahweh. Did you offer me burnt offerings and sacrifices in the wilderness those 40 years? No, apparently they didn't. Well, who gave him the law? Who gave him Leviticus 11 in the 40 years of the wilderness? Come on, Mark. That's not context. This is where you're fiddling and showing partiality in the context. Stephen the martyr was right there when Paul was consenting to his death. There is a reason why. Paul's not that confusing. The Greek word utilized in Acts 10:28 is anthropos, which very clearly designates a human being. Okay? That is correct. That is correct. What you're stating right here is correct. In Acts chapter 10, that word that Peter is declaring in verse 28, (444) is in the Strong's number 444, anthropos. That is right. When Peter is stating which is a human being, whether male or female, that I'm with you. I'm with you. Yep, that is correct. Now, where you're wrong though is in that same Acts chapter 10, Elohim does not use anthropos. Elohim, not Peter. Not Peter. We are to obey man. We are to obey Yahweh, not men, Mark. That's why I don't understand. I'm trying to give you the benefit of the doubt, but you're forcing me in this position like where I don't. Mark, come on, man. You should be better than that. Let's go over it. What word does Elohim use? Verse 12, Acts 10:12. For down the earth, we're all manner of four-footed beasts. Let's see, that's number 5074. A four-footed animal. Does that word is number 5074? Tetraposi. My Greek is terrible. Tetraposi. 5074. Is that a human being, Mark? Is that a human being? Nope, that is not a human being. And this is also in the same inspired text. What is greater? The gold, the temple that sanctifies the gold. See, no, Yahshua the Messiah is shooting your argument down. I'm not doing it. It's Yahshua. This is wisdom filled with partiality and filled with hypocrisy, Mark. It's not, glory not and lie not against the truth. This is what later, this is why it's going to cause trouble for you in Galatians 2:11-14. Wild beasts, number 23:42, an animal, a wild animal. You see right here, 23:42, therion. Bestial man, savage, ferocious, a wild animal, wild beast. I mean, what are we talking about here, Mark? Creeping things. Number 2062, herpeton, a creeping animal, reptile, chiefly of snakes, animals. Do we see any mention of human beings here, Mark? No, we don't. In the same inspired text, so what is greater? The gold, the temple that sanctifies the gold. See, this is why your argument about what Peter said is only showing that Peter is becoming your Messiah. What about what Elohim said? Are we not created in the image of Elohim or on four-footed beasts? I'll even go one deep. Genesis 1:26. We're created in the image of Elohim. In other words, Mark, I'm giving you scriptures. Now, what I'm saying is, I understand. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm meeting you halfway. I understand that point of view. Remember, I was a Messianic. However, though, I'm here to help. Not that I'm not a Christian. Don't get me wrong. But Yahweh's had me, help Christian brethren on this one. You cannot insult intelligence and act as if though, it's no. I'm breaking this down with the best of them. You have to admit that the evidence is also showing that you may be wrong. And at the end of the day, Peter is wrong. Now, this is where biasness comes in, partiality comes in. This is why I know I can't go that far with you until I start getting some response. In other words, what is Peter doing? All right, now, trying to move along with this. When Peter was shown diverse unclean animals, these creatures were utilized to represent human, to great human sin, functioning such like the prophetic imagery found in Ezekiel 8:9-10. Yeah, that's a possibility. I understand that, but we're created in the image of Elohim. Genesis 1:3. See, in other words, I'm giving you scripture just like yours. In other words, you cannot act, and Messianics do that. They blow off because this is wisdom with partiality. And this is where it becomes demonic, Mark. You can't, trying to be humble, weasel your way out of this one. Yahweh provided this unique vision to Peter because all members of the human family have been made clean by the blood of the Messiah Yahshua. Yes, that's true. Ephesians 2. I'm in agreement. But he's already been told that. He was told to go. This is where faith comes in, Mark. He can't be a baby about it. No, come on, Peter. We'll give you a 10th opportunity, 11th opportunity, 12th opportunity. Then he might as well give the Pharisees that. No, this is not exegesis and all that. No, this is becoming a mockery now at this point. No, he was told already. This is where the parable of the sower is very relevant, Mark. Very relevant. Because the gospel was preparing to spread beyond the borders. It already has. The moment it is finished, it is done. Go. Even in Luke 10:8, it was already preparing. But then you see, you're trying to argue against it, Mark. No, that this is where it's. I gotta be very. It's very passionate. Gotta be very patient. Love you, by the way, but it's just like no. This is not making any sense at all. It's showing wisdom filled with partiality. See here. Try to wrap this up. To argue with Peter, to to argue with Peter or misunderstand the vision requires the reader to believe that the Holy Spirit subsequently endorsed a false witness by immediately falling upon Cornelius' household. Acts 10:44-48. A sound biblical theology recognizes that Peter correctly interpreted the vision. The barrier to Gentile inclusion had been decisively removed. Yes, there was a barrier. Okay, there was something clogging up the pipes. I'm in agreement with you, but you're not answering. Well, actually, you're incorrectly answering what was the cause of the holdup. You keep bringing up Second Temple Talmudic thinking when I've already showed easily and debunked. No, Peter was already out of that Second Temple period. When you're picking the grain fields in front of the Pharisees, when you're eating your bread with unwashed hands in front of the Pharisees, when you're going up to that Gentile's house in front of the Pharisees, and you're showing, yep, I'm with the rabbi, you already showed that you're not intimidated by Talmud. What does cause you that knee-jerk reaction is Moses, as we clearly see in the text in Matthew 17. Mark, you're wrong. This is not context. This is turning into an embarrassment. It's not cool. It's not cool. Number 2, conflating Mark 7 with dietary abrogations. To support the theory that Peter was stubbornly forgetting previous teachings, you invoke the Messiah's words regarding what enters. Yeah, and Matthew 15. That's exactly what he says. Are you still without understanding, Peter? You claim this proves Yahshua had already taught the disciples that the biblical dietary laws were nullified. Yahshua the Messiah is telling them, are you still without understanding, Peter? But they're not getting the memo. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is a severe there we go again, misreading of the Second Temple Jewish context. This is a severe misreading of the Second Temple period context, Jewish context. The dispute of Mark 7 and Matthew 15 occurred because the Pharisees and scribes saw the disciples eating bread with unwashed hands. See, this is where, no, I got to stop you right there. Again, you're wrong. I'll tell you why. Let's go over to Matthew. Matthew chapter 17. Matthew chapter 17, verse 9. Matthew 17, verse 9. And as they were coming down from the mountain, Matthew 17, 9. And as they were coming down from the mountain, Yahshua commanded them, saying, tell the vision to no man, until the Son of Man shall be risen from the dead. And his disciples asked him, saying, why then say the scribes that Eliah must first come? Now, Mark, during Second Temple Judaism, that time period, the teaching, the word in the street is that Eliah, the prophet, must come before Mashiach, before the Messiah. Okay? That's what Second Temple thinking, Second Temple period thinking, that's what they were taught at that time. Why was that? Well, I'll go over to Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. This is, again, as a Messiah, I'm saying this humbly to try to help the communicate. I was a Messianic once. I know the countermeasure. I understand that's not where I'm coming from. Maybe I could communicate things better, but at this point, yeah, I'm not getting that reciprocation. In other words, I just want to make sure that, in other words, still giving people the benefit of the chance. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. In Malachi 4, 5 through 6, this is the reason why they thought that. Okay? And Malachi, this Bible's getting old. But it's still hanging together. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Here we go. Malachi 4, Malachi 4, 5 through 6. Behold, I will send you Eliah the prophet before the great and terrible day of Yahweh comes. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. That passage in the Old Testament is the reason why Second Temple period Judaism, the rabbinic teachers that time, were teaching Peter and them that Eliah the prophet must come first before the Messiah shows up. Okay? We see that. Now let's go back to Matthew 17. Okay? This is why the disciples are telling Yahshua, why do they say that Eliah's got to come before you come? In other words, where's Eliah the prophet? Because it says clearly in the inspired text that Eliah the prophet must come first, then you. So, this is why the Old Testament does not interpret the New Testament. Yahshua the Messiah interprets Old and New Testament. Well, Joshua never told them that the clean food laws... No. Stop it, Mark. Matthew 17, verse 10. And his disciples asked him, saying, why then say the scribes that Eliah must first come? And he answered and said, Eliah indeed comes, and shall restore all things. But I say to you that Eliah is already come. What? Wait. Where? Eliah? Really? Where is Eliah? Where is Eliah the prophet? Boy, can I get an autograph? Where? That Eliah is come already, and they knew him not, but did to him whatever they would. Even so shall the Son of Man also suffer of them. Did we miss a memo? Are we also yet without understanding? Did he abolish the... Wait, hold on, what happened? Eliah, where is he? Then understood the disciples that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. That's not what Malachi said. See how this works, Mark? This is what gets you in trouble. I say this humbly. Yahshua the Messiah is the head. What goes into the mouth, through the stomach, out the drought, that does not defile a man. What does defile a man is what comes out of his mouth, like false witnesses. Luke 10:8. Whatever they lay before you, whatever city you're going, eat. Whatever they... Well, that doesn't see... We got it in the context here. We got to see what we got to do is a formal academic... No. In other words, Mark, this is what gets you in trouble. No, because without this passage, you could do this big formal academic methodology and say, well, wait a minute, that was not Yahshua because Eliah never came. No, can't do that. You can't do that. In other words, we walk by faith, not by sight. We speak wisdom in a mystery amongst they that are full grown. A wisdom that is not of this world, nor this world has known. And see, this is why, Mark, your contextualization is full of partiality and hypocrisy. I'm here to help, buddy. I love you. But no, your assessment is wrong right there, because for you to state, as you just stated a while ago, for you to bring up Second Temple period Judaism, as you just said, right, as you stated right here, therefore Peter was not suffering from a lack of understanding. Let's see. Here you go. You claim that this proves Yeshua had already taught the disciples that the biblical dietary laws were nullified. This is a severe misreading of the Second Temple Jewish context. No. Then you might as well say that John the Baptist was not Eliah. Yahshua the Messiah is the head, Mark, not Second Temple Jewish context. This is why Paul says in Colossians 2, let no man deceive you with his philosophy, which is contextualization, because contextualization is a philosophy, his vain deceit, after the tradition of men, and not after the Messiah. Mark, I'm giving you the Messiah. You keep bringing up no, this is why this is false doctrine, Mark. Love you, buddy, but you're wrong. Your whole point just collapsed right here, all of it. The linguistic misunderstanding of opening the mouth. You have a novel linguistic claim regarding Acts 10:34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, asserting that this phrase signifies Peter was speaking falsely or out of turn because he had been deceived. This claim demonstrates a lack of familiarity with biblical languages. In both biblical Hebrew, you're putting the words here, pata, pe, and Koine Greek. Okay. Thank you to Stoma. Again, this is all correct. I'm with you on this. Opening the mouth is a formal Semitic idiom used to introduce a solemn, weighty, or authoritative pronouncement, far from indicating a false witness. The idiom is used to introduce the Sermon on the Mount. He opened his mouth and began to teach them. Matthew 5:2 and Acts 10:34. Okay. Luke uses his idiom to signify that Peter is about to deliver a monumental apostolic declaration of truth. I most certainly understand now that Yahweh is not one to show partiality. Okay, now I'll stop you right there. Again, you're wrong. I'm saying that humbly. Over in Matthew 5, as you're bringing up Yahshua the Messiah, who says, Matthew 5:2. Matthew 5:2, and he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, it starts with the Beatitudes, blessed are the poor. That is, yes, Yahshua the Messiah. No guile was found in Yahshua the Messiah's mouth. Thus says the inspired text. I think you agree and I agree. So, yes, there's no need to see that. And yes, it is an idiom. Here's what this is why I got to be very patient. You're showing wisdom filled with partiality. In that video, I specifically said, out of all the places in the Bible that record the Apostle Peter speaking, now Peter's mouth had guile in it. There's only one place, Mark, that idiom is used for the Apostle Peter. Only one. In other words, out of all the places in the Bible that record Peter speaking, there's only one place that records Peter opened his mouth and said, Mark, do you know how many times, including 1 Peter and 2 Peter, it records Peter speaks, yet you don't find that odd. You don't see any divine inspiration in the fact that the only place that records that one idiom for Peter is in Acts chapter 10, and it correlates right after the fact that Cornelius drops a bomb on him by saying, you were commanded to give us words, because Peter keeps asking, why have you sent for me? Why have you sent for me? I noticed that you totally blew that off, Mark. That's not cool. That is wisdom with partiality. That's not scholarly. That's not contextualization. That's not methodology. No, that's partiality and hypocrisy. That's not using that measure that you use. You're wrong. Your whole argument, remember, lie not and glory not against truth. At this point, you're now using demonic wisdom that is confusing. Totally confusing. Again, I'm well aware that idiom, I agree with you, Mike, but what I said specifically throughout that video is, why is that the only place out of all the places that record Peter speaks, why is that the only place that records that idiom, which is in correlation to Matthew 15, which fits the formal academic methodology, which fits the contextualization, which fits the wisdom and the mystery, which fits the inspired text, which fits, most importantly, Yahshua the Messiah impaled. Are you still without understanding, Peter, that what goes into the mouth, through the stomach, out the drought, that doesn't defile a man? What comes out of your mouth, and that only idiom, that the inspired text that is both active and alive. If Yahweh is going to destroy the wisdom of the wise And the discernment of the discerning. Mark, did you take in consideration maybe Yahweh is trying to help you understand you're wrong? I'm not a theologian, you are. But it doesn't matter if I'm not a theologian and you are. 1 Corinthians 1. Now you have Galatians 2, 11 through 14 is the problem. Peter is either a double-minded man. And if he's a double-minded man, then how can anyone that's unstable in all of his ways, then how can you base doctrine based off of what a double-minded man tells you? That's absurd. But I agree with you. The only other option is no, he's not a double-minded man. He misspoke and acted double-mindedly because the law of Moses is what really was causing him to hesitate. Now go read Paul in Colossians 2 and Galatians. Oh foolish Galatians, who bewitched you? If you, being a Jew, live as the Gentiles do. Again, Mark, I hope you can address this. Second Temple period Jews, before Acts 10, whether they were believing Jews or unbelieving Jews, they had this in common. They did not fellowship with Gentiles. You know that, and I know that. When did Jews begin fellowshipping with Gentiles? It all began at Acts 10. You know that, and I know that. Okay? The mystery behind all this is what happened in Galatians 2. Okay? This is why Paul is specifically stating, and we could break this down in the Greek. I know I could be more than happy to do with you. I'm sure you could do it just as probably better than me. If you, being a Jew, do as the Gentiles do, this is the clue to help you understand what is Peter doing. This is a clue to understand, is Peter double-minded, or is he just embarrassed that he messed up his interpretation of kill and eat? Hey, we all make mistakes, Mark. We all fall short. Can't knock Peter for that. I'm not even knocking Peter for that. What I am knocking is the insult to intelligence here. If you, being a Jew, live as the Gentiles do, and not as do the Jews, he's referring to what came out of Peter's mouth, meaning that, yes, believing Jews fellowship with believing Gentiles. That began, that's the new trend now, with the believing Jews, and not the unbelieving Jews, believing Jews and the believing Gentiles. Then how can you compel the Gentiles to do what Jews do, but Gentiles don't? Or, to be accurate, how can you compel the Gentiles to do what Jews do? That is a different, that is a second, that's two parts to that statement. Okay? Because what he's insinuating right there is Peter is compelling Gentiles to do something that Jews do. Now, Mark, explain to me, please, and I'll be waiting for this response. What is Peter compelling Gentile converts to do that is according to Second Temple period Judaism, because that is the measure that you have chose to use. Therefore, we will use that measure of judgment. This is how Yahweh works, without partiality and without hypocrisy. This is all going by way of the two-edged sword in James 3, 13 through 18. So I'll ask the question again so there's no misunderstandings. What is Peter compelling Gentile converts to do that Jews do, but Gentiles don't do? And I'll be waiting for that response, please. Otherwise, it does no point going off to this video and that video and other things I'm saying, because it just shows that you're being evasive. Okay, I just don't. I have fought too many wars. I don't want to do that anymore. I love you, Mark. Honestly, I'm praying for the best on this one. Please, again, I'm all ears, but again, hopefully this will help. God bless you. We'll talk again very soon.